show for all your latest UFC news and rumors. It's Brian Coyle. It's Sean Stanley. It's the TFM Live Podcast. And it's now.
And good evening. It is 10:30 Wednesday night. Means it's time for the TFM Live Podcast, brought to you by the FullMountMMA.com. I'm Sean Stanley, and as always, joined by Brian Coyle. Brian, how are we doing this evening?
It's good. I haven't tested positive for a drug test, unlike the rest of the UFC.
Yeah,
so
I'm waiting on that second sample to come back for myself. I'm sorry to tell you.
You better hope that B sample comes back good, Sean. Oh, man. Of course, we're referencing the fact that, Brock Lesnar, John Jones, the Chad Mendes suspension. If you're a major player in the UFC, be very wary of your next USADA drug test coming back positive, because it is not good right now in the sport of mixed martial arts. Sean, where do you want to begin? Because the Jones, finding out what it is, we can go with that route. We can go with Brock Lesnar not failing one, but two drug tests, including one in competition, finding out what he tested positive for. Mendes gets a 2-year suspension. Where would you like to begin in the saddest state?
Can't we just start on it as a whole? I mean, honestly,
Sure.
let's just look at it as a whole, because there's an issue somewhere. And nobody can say exactly what it is as far as, they say that I can't pronounce it, so you may have to help me with that.
Sure.
The drug
Which
that
one?
was the estrogen blocker, that the name of it, the actual name of the.
Let's just go with estrogen blocker, because there's going to be a lot of big drug names
that's what I'm saying.
at your way.
I can't even sound smart.
The next, let's say, 45 minutes here on the show. But John Jones tested positive for an estrogen blocker. Brock Lesnar tested positive for an estrogen blocker.
Same thing, same one.
Same exact one.
And supposedly this estrogen blocker can be found in some supplements, but again, you're responsible for what you put in your body. You know the rules. We've said it over and over here. And we talked about it before when like a football player, you got people there that can tell you yes or no if it can go in your body.
Yeah.
And you can try to push the envelope as much as you want, but it shows they're going to catch you if you try.
And I just want to put this out there to anybody who wants to ask more questions about this or have a healthy discussion about performance-enhancing drugs. In that case, you can tweet at us at the Full Mount, at bcoil11, at SS Sports Talk if you're listening live on sportsovertime.com, or if you're listening to the show on a podcast, on YouTube, on the FullMountMMA.com, all that good stuff. Tweet at us. We'd love to have this interesting discussion, because this topic, mainstream media is acting like the sky is falling on the UFC. No, we knew this would happen. We knew when USADA came in and started doing Olympic-style drug testing almost on these guys that, some of the biggest names, some of the dominant athletes were going to test positive. Did we think it would happen the week of UFC 200, that both headlining guys would happen? Probably not. But this was going to happen. It would get worse before it got better. Everyone talked about this.
Yeah, not only that, but any supplements you're taking could still be in your body. That you have taken, especially if you try to push them. And again, supplements have some of these drugs that they're looking for in them. So I could go to GNC, take a USADA test, and test positive. Again, It's about reading what you're putting in your body. All this stuff about, and I was one of them at the beginning. I'm like, look, I can go buy it at GNC. How can that be? Hey, you know the rules before you go in there and do it. And to just do it is almost like you think you're above. To me, you think you're above whatever the testing is.
Yes, this whole situation is crazy. The John Jones news. Let's start there, because that was the earliest in the week, I guess. If you want to talk about that. We didn't even get to talk about Brock testing positive the first time out, because we recorded last Wednesday. So Jones it's revealed on Monday what John Jones tests positive for, and it's an estrogen blocker, which, when you think of this, I got this a lot talking to people about this yesterday. Why would John Jones take an estrogen blocker? Well, the whole concept of an estrogen blocker is, it's when your body, let's have a science lesson real quick, Sean. For example,
I'm here.
All right. So, Men create testosterone and estrogen. Testosterone a higher level than estrogen. Estrogen is the female hormone. Testosterone the male hormone.
Yes, again, everybody creates this. Everybody has this.
Yes, women create more estrogen than testosterone. Yes. So, when a guy like John Jones is taking an estrogen blocker, I think it's more he didn't realize what was in his supplements because Jones has never been, had the reputation of being a guy who was always on top of everything. So that's why I think this came into. And Lesnar might be a different story, which we'll get to. An estrogen blocker will lower the amount of estrogen in your system. That's exactly what it does. And it allows naturally your body to either create more testosterone or that level and that difference between the two will have a greater impact on muscle mass, athletic ability, all that good stuff that we know that testosterone does. You have a question, Sean?
No, I was saying it helps your water weight.
Yes.
You don't retain water. That's something that,
There's some diuretic stuff that also are in charge of that. The Nevada State Athletic Commission revealed that John Jones tested positive for an estrogen blocker. They issued a temporary suspension. We heard about this. This was being bandied around. Rashad Evans of CBS Sports, the great Chael Sonnen on Joe Rogan's podcast, telling very interesting stories about John Jones.
Yeah, it's quite enlightening.
Avoiding USADA drug tests by hiding underneath a mat. We haven't confirmed that story. We haven't heard the other side of it, but multiple fighters have said about this story. So Jones is facing a 2-year suspension by USADA. And that's not on top of what the Nevada State Athletic Commission can do to him. So this is it's really bad news for John Jones because his prime is being wiped out because of the fact that he took this substance, whether knowingly or unknowingly, if it was in a supplement or not. It sounds like everything that I've read, it's probably in the bodybuilding supplement that he took. And remember, this was a guy who kind of just jumped into bodybuilding after his life was kind of in shambles and he was putting on all that weight. And we're watching those deadlift videos and it's like, oh my God, John Jones, this skinny dude, all of a sudden is powerlifting 500 pounds. And maybe somebody in that gym not paying attention to the USADA list is like, hey, John, take this. I mean, we're speculating here, but this is the kind of situation that we would think would be involved with John Jones. He had never tested positive for a banned substance previously. He had tested clean on all his previous 8 drug tests this year. Of course, we know the story about Jones testing positive for cocaine metabolites prior to UFC 182. But then again, cocaine wasn't on the banned substance list.
Imagine that.
Yes, because it gave you no boost in athletic ability. It just, I don't know what Jones was doing the night before a fight taking cocaine, but that was that.
You feel no pain on the cocaine.
Yeah. What did you think of when you heard about this from Jones? Is it one of these things like, does that make sense to you? Were you expecting it to be something else? What were your thoughts when you heard John Jones test positive for an estrogen blocker?
Well, I mean, it's not uncommon, as you said, to find them in bodybuilding supplements and things like that. A lot of them have an estrogen blocker in it. That's why a lot of the bodybuilders use it. As you said, makes you cut down on the estrogen levels and produce more testosterone and things like that. Also, like you said, it can serve as some of them as a diuretic type thing to keep water weight off of you. So, look, I mean, maybe it's something where he was trying to do something else and didn't realize that this was in there, but he liked the other stuff that he was trying to do. You have to remember, he's going into probably one of the most important fights of his career because it was him and Daniel Cormier, a lot of talk going back and forth, and it was him on the big stage, him with a chance to cement his name. And I'm not going to say he knew that he was taking it or not because, again, we were just speculating, but you're responsible for everything that goes in your body if you're an athlete.
Yeah, that's just the way it goes.
You should know what's going in. I mean, what are we going to say? Oh, somebody gave him a shake and he drank it and then that's why he did it? No, there was enough levels in there to test positive on tests for USADA.
You're headlining the biggest mixed martial arts card of all time. Maybe pay attention to everything that you're putting into your body. It's your one literal job. And we're destroying, we're coming after Jones here. He's been heavily criticized for this with good reason. But we have to talk about the other guy who tested positive for this, and the reaction has been very different, which I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this, Sean. Of course, Brock Lesnar, on Friday at 7 o'clock, the show ends that I work on CBS Sports Network. I'm walking from 57th Street and 11th Avenue in New York City down to Penn Station, which is about, a 40-minute walk. It's taking a nice stroll. All of a sudden, I pull up Twitter during my walk. Brock Lesnar tests positive at UFC 200 for a banned substance. Or prior to the UFC 200, excuse me. Mm-hmm. The article goes up. Everyone's freaking out about it. We don't know what the hell's going on. Then we find out earlier this week, that Lesnar also tested positive for the same substance in competition sample. So this was on July 9th, the day of UFC 200. And, people were asking, why is it taking this long for the test to come back? It takes a while. The way the system works is you're not going to be able to turn around a test that quickly, and they're all unknown samples. Like, the people who are testing these samples don't know whose it is. They're just probably going off a number of some sort or whatever. So there's no chance of we're going after this guy. It's the way USADA talks about it. It's an anonymous process that spits out the result at the end. So Lesnar tests positive again a second time, and then it's reported by ESPN and the LA Times that it was the same estrogen blocker that Jones tested positive for. There was a story going around that Lesnar was training outside. He has asthma, as been duly noted throughout his career, and he took a breath of an inhaler, and that caused him to test positive. It appears that's not the case. What was your reaction to Lesnar testing positive for a banned substance as opposed to Jones?
You look at Brock Lesnar, and it's been noted. Mark Hunt noted it. He looks like a guy that you could go after and say, you can say he's a big country boy, whatever you want to say, but if I had to pick one of the two that were on a PED, I'd probably go with Lesnar over Jones. Yeah,
when you look at him, the whole thing with Lesnar was he's a genetic freak. Yeah. That's the way he's been booked throughout his wrestling career. That's the way he was when it came to the UFC. And now that image is obviously shattered because of this the PED drug test.
But see, I don't think so. It's shattered in the UFC spectrum, but not in WWE. That's
And who knows? We don't know the ban list in WWE, so we don't know if this was on it.
It'll be on it. If it's on USADA, usually it's on there because they suspend for marijuana tests and things like that. So I can guarantee you this is going to be on there. But again, he's under a contract to where it's I believe a per performance. So he's not like a in-ring competitor like that. He's on a per performance contract. So is that going to affect him the same way it affects these guys that do night in, night out? I don't know how they're going to work that out.
Yeah, but the thing with Lesnar was I saw the Twitter reaction to Jones, and it was obviously vitriolic because, the guy foiled the UFC 200 main event right 3 days before it happened, all this crazy stuff. When Lesnar tested positive, I'm seeing, of course he did. Look at Brock Lesnar. It's an absolute...
Honestly, I thought it was a diuretic.
Yeah,
because there's no way in a month he's going to get down. If he walks around at 290, 300 pounds, he's got to get to 265. I guess in a month you can do that, but that's a big change to lose a pound a day.
Yeah, and we had kind of speculated to try to figure it out. And, of course, we don't know.
Plus, he looked shredded, too, when he was on there. Compared to what he did look like. Of course he did. You saw his last fight, and I know he had a diverticulitis and things like that, but it just looked like a complete form. Even from his last WWE fight, It looked like a completely different Lesnar.
And Lesnar is probably a guy who keeps track of all these things. It just seems to be the way his mentality. He was an amateur wrestler. Earlier levels of drug test, obviously, back in those days. But Lesnar, of course, is getting older in age. If this was something that he was taking purposely, it would make more sense than why Jones was taking it, given the fact that he turned 39 a couple of weeks ago. So when you get older, you naturally create less testosterone. So this could be the particular reason why Lesnar was doing it. He could have had a tainted supplement. He could have taken something wrong. We won't know unless Brock says something about it. That's the way these kinds of things go. When he tested positive the first time, he sent a statement to the Associated Press saying, we will get to the bottom of it.
I guarantee it's the same thing. It's a supplement. I can guarantee you it's probably an over-the-counter supplement, or one of the sponsors sent them something and them not even thinking about it. It was like, oh, if our sponsor sends it to us, it must be clean or something. And so then they took it, and it's not.
I couldn't imagine just taking something. It's just insane to me. This is like their guy.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. I mean, just the fact that anybody in their camp wouldn't be like, wait a minute. I mean, you look at what John Jones' camp lost out on.
Oh, man, those guys must have been the most pissed off of anybody.
I mean, a week out from a fight.
They're driving around in Escalades, thanks to Jones. I mean, they've joked about it on the Embedded. It's like the whole crew's got Escalades. Well, you can't throw new spinners on those because Jones didn't get his payday.
Yeah, and the repossession might be coming at you, too.
Who the hell knows at this point? And then you've got this other sort of thing. And I mean, we can save the Lesnar. Like, there's a whole nother podcast that me and you could do on Lesnar and WWE and all of that kinds of stuff. Lesnar's not going to fight in the UFC ever again. There's no way. Because
at the minimum, he'll probably get a 2-year suspension at least, and that'll be 41.
And they'll come after him too, because of the way this kind of, he had the exemption that the UFC granted.
Well, that was the whole thing. Like, everybody, I think that was part of the whole thing on Twitter. Like, of course. I mean, you gave him an exemption. I mean, you had to know something. And whether they're like, they sit there and they're like, oh, I was listening to somebody, and they're like, I have to believe that Vince McMahon and Dana White said, look, you're going to be tested. Are you clean?
Yeah, and he passed 3 drug tests.
Yeah.
Before he tested positive for that one, and then the in-competition drug test in UFC 200. So, Lesnar tests positive. So, Mark Hunt asks these questions like, yeah, I called it in the beginning, and Hunt is asking for half of Lesnar's purse on Twitter. Then he goes for, screw it, I want all of the money. And the way this kind of thing goes is...
Well, he said he wanted all the money or his release, right?
He wanted at least half of the Lesnar's $2.5 million fight purse or his release. Now, he called for all of it. What I was reading, Ariel Helwani was reporting on this, it doesn't seem like they can take all of the money away from Brock. They can fine him, and Brett Okamoto from ESPN was reporting that Brock has to pay the fine, even though, like, if he doesn't want to fight again and doesn't want to ever be licensed again in Nevada, he's got to pay the fine because the state of Nevada asked for that money. So whatever the fine may be, when they adjudicate the situation. And then you have Hunt asking for this money, and Lesnar's got no reason to give it to him, no legal reason. I mean, we've never seen, like, he's not going to give him $1 million out of the good of his heart. Like, the pay-per-view buys still count. The money still comes in. Like, this is, as dirty as that sounds, this is the way it is going forward.
Yeah.
This is what happens. And Hunt, I haven't got a chance to watch it because it happened.
And we're sitting here like, I mean, what happens if, and this is hypothetically, of course.
Yep.
What if it comes back and Lesnar somehow can prove that he didn't take anything, but it was something, like you're saying, the inhaler, the whatever. I mean, what then? I mean, what if it's,
I don't know,
not exactly as like somebody just, because again, I think the problem a lot with PEDs is everybody thinks, oh, the guy put a needle in his butt and now he's trying to become something he's not.
No, it's not every 80s movie imaginable.
No, exactly. But I mean, it's so hilarious that it's automatically assumed that, how do you know they were obviously they were trying to get an advantage, but is it as devious as what we're thinking, or was it just being a bonehead?
We don't know. We won't know unless Brock says something about it. This is not Rocky IV where they're building Drago in the basement and
you get the needle with the liquid coming out of it.
No, this is not. I mean, and it's funny because of all that, Stallone was on the most steroids in that movie. But I digress. This is Hunt released a video saying he would head up a fighters union about this kind of stuff. I haven't been able to get to watch it because it literally happened probably a half hour, or probably an hour and a half ago. But this is the kind of story, and then it just kind of snowballs. And everyone freaks out about it. But guess what? They're cleaning up the sport. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Dana White's off at the Republican National Convention because I don't know why not.
You got to put your face everywhere, right?
Yeah, Darren Ravel is tweeting out that the UFC new owners could potentially sour on the deal because of the week that UFC's had, which I think is a load of BS because, Lesnar tested positive. What did you expect? Jones is gone. You have all of these other guys that Fox Sports was trying to buy the UFC for $3.8 million, or $3.8 billion. So this is... That's the sport is going to be fine, and I've seen the sky is falling on Twitter the past week.
But let me ask you this, okay, Brian? If you're these new owners, $4 billion, you're thinking about purchasing this company. Now all of a sudden you're seeing every face that you think, okay, that's a dollar sign. There's dollar signs. There's dollar signs. Whoop, they're gone. Whoop, he's gone. Whoop, he's gone. You don't think that's going to sour your deal if you're the one with the $4 billion sitting there?
Well, they had to know this was coming. If you're going to spend $4 billion on something, you have to know the regulations and the hoops that you're jumping into. And then, Sean, it's July 20th. In about a month, Conor McGregor's fighting. And when all of those pay-per-view buys come in, they'll be just fine with Brock Lesnar testing positive and never coming back ever again. So this is one of those things where...
Unless McGregor loses for the second straight time. Then that cash cow's probably cashing out too.
But here's the thing. That money that still comes in from UFC 202, you figure it out later. But again, you're looking at, then you put Nate Diaz, I guess, as your money guy because by then he'll have a name, but this is, if they're souring on the deal, I'm saying now, this is not, I'm just going off this. I can see where, you gotta start looking at this going, okay, when we're looking at this, we're going into the biggest pay-per-view, and yeah, I'm sure they made tons of money on UFC 200, but also since coming out of UFC 200, it hasn't been, blue skies for the UFC. No, it has not been.
And as you look, you got guys still testing positive, and look, ultimately everybody's going to try to get that advantage. So how long does it go, and when does it? And then now you've got fighters saying the U word, union.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think that will ever work for the same reason it never worked in pro wrestling. And I know it's two different things.
No, but you're exactly right.
I can guarantee you right now, Mark, if you want to sit on the sideline and wait for a union, I can guarantee you there's a heavyweight right now training at any gym across the U.S. that they can get and put in there. Will he get the same amount of money that you'll get? No, they're probably going cheaper, but you know what? They're going to find somebody else.
Yeah, there's always another fighter. There are a finite amount of huge draws that the UFC has at this point in time, but it's up to the new ownership and the matchmakers to build these new. You have to, make it work. Conor McGregor fell into their lap, and they were smart to build him the way they did. Now you have to continue to do that. You can't just put all of your eggs in one basket. So the UFC will have to figure it out. The new owners will have to do it. You'll have brand new stars coming in. Heck, we interviewed a possible star in the bantamweight division that's huge. We talked to Jimmy Rivera. You can find it on the website right now on thefullmountainmma.com. Number 14th ranked bantamweight Jimmy Rivera. I had the pleasure of talking to him this weekend over the phone. We have a nice little interview about it. He talked about his Uriah Faber fight. This is a guy who, if he goes out and beats a big name like Faber, bantamweight gets even more loaded. Like, this is the kind of thing you have to be able to create these new fighters and give them new opportunities. And when your big draws go down, this is what you have to have a backup plan. We've seen time and time again guys pull out of main events over and over and over again because of injury. This is the way this sport does. And was the price point $4 billion a lot? To me, did I think the UFC was worth more than the Dallas Cowboys or Real Madrid or Manchester United? No. But this is the price we paid. This is the life we live. This is where the new owners of the UFC have to do some work and figure out what their direction is, because you have Brock Lesnar testing positive and he's gone pretty much forever. He's in the WWE draft. He's doing that now because there's no way Brock comes back and is able to fight ever again in the UFC the way this kind of all shakes out. John Jones is gone for a little while. You have to figure out your stuff. Chad Mendez, who's another big name, got overshadowed by all this stuff, got a 2-year suspension from USADA today for a previous drug test from June. So these fighters are going to test positive and things are going to happen. Is the USADA system perfect yet? No, not by any stretch. But we're slowly figuring all this out, what's going to happen. And it's up to the UFC to adjust and motivate their new fighters and figure out which guys they can rely upon and which guys they cannot. Sean, we got a lot more to talk about here on TFM Live, the official podcast at thefullmountmma.com. If you guys want to learn more about Lesnar suspension, Jones, the interview we did with Jimmy Rivera, and a couple other things, we'll be breaking down in the next segment the UFC Chicago fight card, which doesn't have as much buzz as you would think, which is very surprising given the participants in the main and co-main event. So we'll talk about that. A couple other news items we'll get to as well. I want to talk. We didn't finish talking about the UFC Sioux Falls fight last night, and there's one particular guy that we need to talk about because, man, John Lineker can throw those hands. And it's absolutely ridiculous. So we'll talk about that. Remember, we said it in the beginning of the show. You can find us online, thefullmountmma.com. Tweet at us, questions, anything you want us to talk about on the podcast, all that kinds of stuff, at The Full Mount, at BCoyle11, at SS Sports Talk. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Leave a review. Leave a rating. You can search TFM Live. It pops right up. So we're going to take a quick break. We come back. We'll head on into UFC Chicago and talk about that and more on TFM Live, the official podcast of thefullmountmma.com.
For all your latest news and rumors of the UFC, go to thefullmountmma.com. Now back to the TFM Live podcast. Here's Brian Coyle and Sean Stanley.
All right, we bring it back in here. It is the Full Mount MMA.com powered the TFM Live podcast. Sean Stanley, Brian Coyle here with you. Broke down a little bit of PED talk to begin with. Now we're going to dive into UFC Chicago.
I've got good news, Sean. No one else has tested positive for any estrogen blockers.
Yeah, it's not a pay-per-view. I'm waiting for somebody to get hurt or pop on a test, but I forgot this isn't a pay-per-view, right?
No, it is a UFC on Fox card on Big Fox this Saturday from the United Center. UFC Fight Night Chicago, once co-headlined by Anthony Johnson and Glover Teixeira. That fight is no longer on that card. It's on UFC 202, which used to have the Carlos Condit, Damian Maia fight, but now that's headlining the fight night in Vancouver. So lots of card movement. This card has pretty much been settled since Johnson pulled out, and they've rescheduled that fight. Holly Holm makes her return to the octagon since losing to Miesha Tate a couple months ago. She takes on Valentina Shevchenko, the number 7 women's ranked women's bantamweight fighter. And this is a major spot for Holm. I haven't seen a lot of build-up to this fight. I don't know what the ratings are going to be. The UFC is basically banking on Holm's drawing ability as the person who knocked out Ronda Rousey, and I'm interested to see how the ratings work. But from a fight perspective, this is a fight that Holm has to be kind of protective of, because Shevchenko is a grinder. She's the type of fighter who's a dog. She will go after Holly Holm, and I know it's not the smartest thing to throw with a boxing champion, but we don't know what kind of Holly Holm we'll get, because we still don't, because she was very, very, very cautious against Miesha Tate in her title fight. What do you think about this fight coming up? Because, as you like to say, anything can happen, and this is a very intriguing main event to me.
No, it's very intriguing, and you know, we discuss this all the time, and I feel like I at least repeat myself every time it happens. When you get beat, how Holly Holm got beat. Again, we've seen Jose Aldo come back and look fantastic. we've seen, but you've also seen fighters come back and not be so fantastic. She was at the top of the world. She'd beaten Ronda Rousey. She was going to be the face of female fighting, and then she went out there and lost to Miesha Tate. Does that, you can go one of two ways, I mean, the camp is going, how mentally tough is she? She seems like she's very put together mentally. I guess we'll find out when the bell rings and she's got to take on Shemenko there. But I mean, I don't know. This one is going to be a tough one because I always worry about you won't know until how she reacts to the first time. What happens if she gets put in that same position again? Is she going to be? You got to remember, she didn't tap out against Tate.
She passed out.
She went to sleep.
WrestleMania 13, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, I mean, she showed that. Hey, look, you're going to have to take it over. I don't want to say dead body, but she passed out. She was not tapping out. She was not going to lose that belt by giving it to Miesha Tate. She just went to sleep. Yep. So you have that. That's home. So you're going to have two grinders there, and right now it's who wants it more. It's almost like a trap fight for home, because if she wins, you're kind of expected to win. Yeah, if you lose,
her nickname is Bullet for a reason. She's going to come at you.
Yeah.
She's 1-1 in the UFC. If you haven't heard of her, she beat Sarah Kaufman in a split decision in her debut in December, then lost to Amanda Nunes on that same card as Holly Holm losing to Miesha Tate at UFC 196. It was Conor McGregor went down as well in a unanimous decision. So the last time we saw her was against now the current UFC women's bantamweight champion, and Shevchenko tried. It didn't seem like she was getting a lot. She could get past Nunes's wall that she kind of put up, and it wasn't the most exciting fight. And I expect this one to kind of just be a grinded out. It won't be the most entertaining fight, at least from my perspective. I don't know. I don't see it going to be like that. I think it might go the distance, the way it kind of goes. But who knows? We could have a flash KO because you can never predict this sport. But you're right. This is a very dangerous, because we still don't know. Like, Holly Holm came out with the perfect mentality, beat Ronda Rousey, right? She comes out against Tate. She's obviously staying away. And she was scoring points like a boxer would. Mm-hmm. And then she got caught, and that was it. She tapped out she passed out in the fifth round. Yep. So it will be interesting to see what Shevchenko does if she focused more on her Muay Thai, getting up in the clinch, because you don't want to stay far away from home because of the reach and the lankiness that she has. So I'm excited for this fight. It's not the big Holly Holm fight that you would think right after Miesha Tate, but there's a very real possibility here that we see another upset that can throw the women's bantamweight division into a tizzy. Who do you got in this fight? Because we have to make our picks. I still haven't totaled them up yet.
Yeah, I know. Oh, well, way to go there. I need to know. Yeah. I need to know where I stand right now to know which pick I need to go here. No,
I think you're ahead of me by a couple fights.
All right, I'm going with Holm just because she's the more proven fighter to me right now, and for nothing else, that I think she is mentally tough to where she can put that behind her, and hopefully we see the Holly Holm that we saw against Rousey, and even, need I say, the non-exciting Holm that we saw before she fought Rousey, which is why we thought she had no chance against Rousey. But I think she'll get the victory, as you said.
I agree with you. I think it will be very, very tenuous, though. I think it's going to be very close. I think Shevchenko's got a real shot at beating her, but I'm going to go with Holm simply because I think the distance will be an issue for Shevchenko trying to come in and do her work in the clinch and try to use her Muay Thai. But it's not the only great fight that we have on this card that's definitely not getting enough love. Edson Barbosa and Gil Melendez now co-main event this fight. Gil Melendez returning from we talked about PEDs. He's returning from a banned substance suspension. He last fought against Eddie Alvarez in June in a losing split decision, and then previous to that, he had lost to Anthony Pettis via second-round submission in December of 2014 in a title fight. And and his last win coming against Diego the Nightmare Sanchez in October of 2013. So Melendez comes back and fights my favorite kicker in the entire universe, Edson Barboza, because, man, he's been on a tear recently. The number 6 ranked lightweight in the world. He beat Anthony Pettis in his last fight, beat him down bad. It was a very close fight against Ferguson until El Kuki was able to submit him in the second round, and he destroyed Paul Felder in July of last year at that fight night. So Barboza has looked better and better in every fight that he's had, and now he gets a major opponent in Gil Melendez. How do you see this fight playing out?
I see a lot of kicks, and kicks I don't want to be on the receiving end of.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just come on. I think this is not a fight you want to return to. So for that, I'm going with Barboza. I mean, I don't even know. You don't know what to expect, and I don't know. I just Barboza for me.
I've got Barboza as well. I think he's incredibly dangerous as a striker, and Melendez is going to have some octagon rust.
Not good for me that you went both picks the same.
I'm tallying it up right now, so if you want to vamp a little bit on this fight, I can easily tally them up. Or we can, since we've given our picks, we can talk about my favorite story of the week, and it's not any of the PED stuff. We can talk about Jose Aldo's claims that a spy was in Frankie Edgar's camp sent by Aldo, and he knew what the answer was going to do during his fight.
I mean, it makes plenty of sense because he knew. You can't come up with a better fight than what Aldo came up with there. I mean, honestly, it makes sense, but I don't know. Again, it's mind games, whatever. But I just think it's funny because that is hilarious. But as I said, it makes perfect sense because if I was Edgar at that fight, I would have thought, I would have been like, "What are you, coaches? Are you telling him what I'm doing next? Or you hold up a board?" Because it seemed like Aldo was that far ahead of him in that fight.
Well, I've got good news, Sean. You beat me when it came to the UFC 200 stuff. You outscored me 8-7. We threw out the Jones-Cormier fight. Obviously,
why is that? I won.
Just because Jones tested positive for PD.
Listen, I called how it was going to play out. I said Jones is going to do something stupid, and Cormier is going to get the victory. What happened?
I'm not giving you that because now you have a four. Hold on, you have a 3-fight lead on me. You're up 13. You've got 13 correct picks. I've got 10, so you're up 3 fights. Excuse me, on that.
Oh,
so
I feel gypped.
Well, I'm not giving you that one because I would have picked Cormier over Silver anyway. But this is the kind of story where it's like Aldo's rubbing it in, which I love, but this kind of sounds similar to something that we've heard of before. When's the last time we heard about spies in a camp of a fighter? Oh, wait. Conor McGregor saying that he had spies in Aldo's camp.
Yep.
Is the sequel as good as the original? Probably not. Is he biting off of a McGregor staple, or is he actually telling the truth? I'd love to know the answer to that.
Yeah,
but
judging by the fight, I think he did, but that's beside the point.
Mark Henry, Frankie Edgar's head coach, was not concerned when he heard this story. He said, quote, "I don't care. I couldn't care less. We should have been able to adjust anyway." Quote, "I believe I should have adjusted no matter what he did. I should have been smart enough to adjust right after the fight was over. There were 20 things I thought I should have adjusted." And of course, the quote from Aldo was absolutely great. He's like, "If I kicked, he'd take me down. We had a few spies from the other side, people that were training close to him the entire week, and they always came and talked to us. So I had to stop kicking and using my left hand because he would counter on that. Of course I had spies. Otherwise, why wouldn't I kick? That's my instinct." Remember, Aldo did not kick as much.
No.
It was very weird to see.
Rogan
Jose
called
Aldo.
it out a couple times. He's like, "This is like a different Aldo."
So he said, so we always have a spy. We send someone to be part of that training room and they give us the information. We get that information and we know what they're training. Frankie Edgar also tweeted out the scene from The Departed where Jack Nicholson's character is interrogating Leonardo DiCaprio's character about a bleeping rat in their thing. So I think everyone's having a little bit of fun with this. Do I think there was a rat in that camp? I don't think so, unless there was some dude with a fake mustache standing in the corner. But
I mean, honestly, though, how much even if there was a rat in there, okay, you can tell him what he thinks he's going to do, but you still got to go out there and execute it.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter either way if there was, if there wasn't. If there was, Frankie's
got to make a great story.
Yes. Frankie's got to find better people to surround himself with if there was. But it's one of these fun little stories.
But see, I think that's where, you get these fighters, you bring in fighters to train that are sort of like Jose Aldo to get used to fighting somebody like that. Those are the chances you take.
Yeah, so you have to be smart, and you got to play it close to the vest, apparently, and Frankie might do that next time. So, and Aldo biting a page out of McGregor's book, and I hope those two get to fight again, because I'd love to see it happen. It all depends if Conor will drop down to 145 again, and we're both a little wary of that happening. One more story we want to get to before we head out of here. The Ultimate Fighter 24 flyweight cast has been revealed. Of course, Demetrius Johnson was supposed to fight Wilson Heiss at UFC 201. That did not happen because of an injury to the champion. So Mighty Mouse's next fight seems to be, depending on how he recovers, based on the 24th installment of The Ultimate Fighter. This is the first for the reality series because they're going to get a shot at Demetrius Johnson on the Tough finale card right now, currently booked for December 3rd in Las Vegas at a venue to be determined. They haven't decided if it's the MGM or T-Mobile or whatever. The fighters will be broken up into 8-man teams coached by Joseph Benavidez and Henry Cejudo, who will also fight on the Tough finale card. The interesting thing about this is the entire Tough cast have been champions in promotions, in fight promotions from around the world. So you get guys from Legacy FC, from Ring of Combat, from Japanese fighting federations, from South American fighting federations, from Canadian stuff, Titan FC. So you're getting a whole bunch of different champions from all of these promotions. I love the idea. It's a great idea. Will they be able to take down the greatest fighter, pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC today? I don't know about that, but I like the setup. What do you think? Will this entice you to watch The Ultimate Fighter season 24 that we're at this point?
See, I know how this radio thing works, so I can't just say no. But, yeah, nothing. There's a reason they're a champion in, you called them out, the Legacy and all these. They hadn't made it up to the UFC, or maybe the UFC wasn't looking at them, or whatever. I mean, again, they don't look at everybody, or maybe they just wanted to be there where they could be the champion. But you're talking about stepping in the ring, as you said, with a pound for pound, probably right now, best fighter in the UFC.
Yeah, and
nothing you're doing in that house. And I understand that they film it beforehand, so they're going to have some time to train once they get the opportunity to know they're going to fight Johnson. But that's not enough time. It's not. Yeah. I mean, to me, you're hoping to go in there and land. If a brawler wins it, maybe I'll give him a fighter's chance, a puncher's chance. But I mean, I don't see anybody beating Johnson. I mean, if the competition that he's beaten twice hasn't done it, I don't see somebody else coming out of the blue. But hey, I mean, we also didn't see a lot of other things happening, and they've happened in the UFC recently. So I won't say never, but I don't believe it's going to happen because of the Tough 24 cast.
And speaking of brawlers that used to be at flyweight, I want to close the show out with this. I forgot about this week because we were recording while UFC Sioux Falls was happening last Wednesday. By the way, one of the best, it might have been the best card of the whole week, which is saying something when you had UFC 200 and then the Ultimate Fighter finale with Joanna and Claudia Gadelha. John Lineker, holy shnikes, dude. That dude can throw hands. Destroying Michael McDonald in that fight at UFC Sioux Falls. Tony Ferguson got that fight against Landon Veneta, who was a debut fighter. That card was absolutely fantastic. And I want to talk about Lineker for a second here, because I mean, he did the customary call out Dominic Cruz, but Lineker, who was a guy who's ranked 5th, in a very dangerous bantamweight division. He's seems more comfortable at that weight, and despite the fact that he's 5'3", he's one of the most dangerous fighters in that division. And to me, he's kind of an intriguing option for Cruz's next title defense. What do you think about John Lineker's performance on Wednesday, and where he kind of stands now at 135 pounds?
Well, I mean, you got to put him in. I just think just the excitement part of it gives him a chance at a fight. I mean, for the title right now, you got everything going on in the UFC right now. You need as much excitement created as possible. And I mean, depending on these fights, and as you said, what's funny to me is that a lot of these, Fox and FS1 cards seem to outdo some of the pay-per-views. Maybe not by name recognition and things like that, but when the fights happen, it's like, man, I'm glad I got to see that.
I'm totally on board with this. Watching him, it was great, and like a possible matchup between him and TJ Dillashaw could be in the future.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that, because you get a brawler like him, and then Dillashaw, who looked great in his last fight at UFC 200 against Rafael Sunsao. Bantamweight's loaded, and I'd love to see a couple more fights before we see Cruz take another challenger. I mean, Dillashaw maybe has earned it, but man, I'd pay good money to see TJ and Lineker fight.
Yeah, I mean, I say either that fight or just give him a shot at the title.
Yeah,
one of the two. I mean, I don't want to see Dillashaw Cruz again yet.
No, I mean, and then Faber's fighting Rivera, so that Dillashaw-Faber fight may not be in the future as well. Sean, you got anything else?
I did want to ask you, did you see the knee from Page this week in Bellator? I know we usually talk UFC, but...
Yes, that is great point to bring that up, because Cyborg Santos had his skull fractured at the Bellator event by MVP.
I'm sure you've watched it by now. Did you hear the sound? I mean, it made. I mean, just you could hear it.
It was the worst injury that I've ever seen, like in the cage. Like just watching that video.
Yeah, I mean,
man,
didn't even tap, nothing. Just grabbed his head, went to the ground, and the ref stopped it. You just knew he was in so much pain. He was kicking his feet. You knew it was in pain. I mean, I didn't know it was that. What it. I mean. I knew because I saw the pictures beforehand, but obviously the ref, nobody knew. But when you saw the end result and then you watched the video, you could just hear like the bone crushing.
You hit it clean, because that was devastating, and it was great to hear that Bellator will be paying Cyborg's medical bills, and they set up a GoFundMe page. So, and that supposedly was funded as well. That was set up by his ex-wife, Christine Cyborg Justino. So it's good to hear that, and that he'll be okay. But man, it's one of those moments where it's like, yeah, this is the most dangerous sport. So moments like that are going to happen. And man, it was one of the most devastating injuries that I've ever seen in a cage. And that Bellator event, very, very interesting turn of events there. But we send out our thoughts to Cyborg. Hopefully he's healing up well, because I don't think he should enter a cage maybe ever again.
Yeah, no, I don't think, not with something like that, man. You just, even if, what are you gonna, I mean, that probably was a career ender right there.
Yeah. He says he's going to be back in 6 months, dude, no, don't do
You're going to put a metal plate in your head. You think anybody's going to let him fight, though, honestly?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, to fix a fracture, don't they usually put like a plate or something there?
I think so. So,
I mean,
I don't know what's going to happen.
Go in there and punch the plate? I mean, it's almost like you got an advantage.
It's like Colossus and X-Men. You're just going to bang right off of it. Well, thanks, Sean, for joining me tonight. And thank you guys for listening on sportsovertime.com. And if you're listening on iTunes to the TFM Live podcast, of course, if this is the first time listening, click that little subscribe button on the side. We'd love to get your download. Tell us what we're doing wrong or right. Review us, rate us on iTunes, all that great stuff. Head over to thefullmountmma.com. We've got plenty of news and articles and interviews with fighters on the website right now. We talk Jones, we talk Lesnar. As I mentioned, we interviewed Jimmy Rivera as well. You can follow us online at The Full Mount on Twitter, at SS Sports Talk, at BCoyle11 from me on Twitter. And then you can head over to our YouTube page. Just type in The Full Mount MMA into the search bar on YouTube. We'll pop right up. You can subscribe to our YouTube page, like our videos. And if you want to listen to portions of the podcast, we cut them up every week. And if you don't have time to listen to all in one block, listen to them in nice chunks. We'll have plenty of stuff cut up, including our previews for UFC Chicago, our performance-enhancing drug talk involving Brock Lesnar, John Jones, and plenty more. So thank you guys for listening. For Sean, I'm Brian. We're out.
The TFM Live Podcast was brought to you by TheFullMountMMA.com. Check us out on Twitter at The Full Mount.